Waking up feeling like it's gonna rain.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the third podcast of the Journey Towards Healthy Living Talks. We're with Rachel Finnerty here, who is a professor at McMaster University and is currently doing her PhD in music therapy. So, Rachel, it would be cool if you could give us a little introduction of what you do.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. This is great. Always love to talk about music therapy, so thank you for the platform. I've been teaching at McMaster, started actually in 2010. I wrote the music therapy course and brought it forward, and it was so awesome how humanities, actually the School of the Arts, embraced giving it a go. And we started off with a handful of students. And just this last academic year, I taught over 3,000 students in the Intro to Music Therapy, the music therapy course, and brought it forward. And it was so awesome how humanities, actually the School of the Arts, embraced giving it a go. And we started off with a handful of students. And just this last academic year, I taught over 3,000 students in the Intro to Music Therapy. So I love that this is such a great way to advocate and educate about music therapy. Another great way to advocate, of course, is through research. So I came back to be a student myself in September 2019 in the Department of Psychology, Neuroscience, Behavior under the supervision of Dr. Laurel Trainer. And so here I'm doing research about the use of music therapy for proactive wellness and looking specifically at proactive wellness for undergraduate university students. As yourselves, I'm sure you can attest to the fact that proactive wellness is really important in order to be successful in your studies. I don't know how do you feel about that?
No, definitely. If you want to give a quick definition of proactive wellness for anyone listening.
Yeah, I really look forward to the day that this term of being proactive in wellness is just like talking about going to the gym or talking about your physical health. It's something that it's just part of our regular vocabulary. But you're right. At the moment, it's not. And that's part of what I'm hoping to bring forward on campus, is to make it a part of the regular part of being a student and beyond as well. Because right now in healthcare, particularly when we talk about mental health, our mental well-being, our overall societal model is reactive. And so what I mean by that is typically it's not until somebody is in crises that support is provided. If you're kind of like, I would like some support, but you're not in crisis, then typically you're on a waiting list and you're waiting and you're waiting. But if you're in crisis, then you can have a lot more supports readily available. And so one thing about being proactive is engaging in things that are going to prevent crisis, and building tools to manage our well-being, to manage stress, to reduce anxiety. So there are many things we can do proactively. There's so much research already about physical health, right? Like proactively eat well, right? Proactively exercise. But in regards to proactive wellness for our mental health, it's not part of our regular routine necessarily.
Do you think there's some sort of stigma towards that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is what we need to get rid of, is this stigma that, if I'm working on my mental health, then people might think I have a problem. And, oh my goodness, I wouldn't want anyone to think I might be struggling. So there is this societal pressure to be stoic. And not to be working on our well-being, whereas there is no negative stigma for exercise, right? If you're just exercising for well-being, people aren't looking at you like, oh, they have a problem, and whatever other stereotypes come along with that.
Professor Finnerty, how there's this culture at university where it's kind of hard to talk about your mental struggles as a student, because if you say I'm struggling, there's always going to be another person that one-ups your struggles and says, well, it's not as bad as I am. But how would you envision proactive mental health at McMaster? What do you see us doing to help battle stigmas like this and stuff?
Yeah, I think making it a part of the regular conversation, recognizing that everybody needs to participate in managing their own well-being. And some people may already have developed more tools than another person, but it doesn't mean that they're still not struggling or they still don't need to participate in that. Just like one person might have been active, maybe they always participated in hockey since being a young child. So keep maintaining their physical health maybe isn't as difficult, but they still have to do it. And somebody who maybe didn't have the option to engage in a team or sports, it's going to be harder for them, right? So, in this conversation, it's harder for me than it is for you. It's not about that. It's about the fact we all have to still do it. We still all have to put in effort to ensure we're taking care of our whole self. Yeah. So as far as changes on campus, we have to have more of these conversations and make like the wellness center more so a place that everybody engages in, the same as the sports center. It's for everybody. And the wellness center needs to be for everybody and really communicated more strongly in order to get rid of that stigma. It's not somewhere to come because you're struggling. Like I see posters around that say, stress, anxiety, come to this group, come to that group. How about, hey, you're not necessarily struggling with stress or anxiety, but you just want to build tools to continue to manage your stress and anxiety.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, those are great points.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I love how you brought that up, Miriam, about like, I'm struggling more than you, because I'm someone just that doesn't, I guess, portray that they're stressed or they have anxiety or anything like that. So I get a lot of the time, like people are like, oh, you don't get stressed, or like you don't. I'm like, what are you talking about? I just don't like showing it. I don't know if that's like a common thing that you see with your students.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point to recognize that just because it's not evident that somebody is struggling or is feeling stressed or feeling anxious, it doesn't mean that that's not the case, because as a human being, of course you're gonna feel some stress or anxiety. Yeah. And I would hope that you do. Like, we all need to have all of our emotions. To be fully alive, we have to feel every emotion. And I think that's another thing that gets in the way, that is feeding a negative stigma about mental health, is labeling emotions as bad or good or negative and positive. I see this in research, and I think it's really not helping us move forward, because all emotions have benefit as long as they're being used to serve us.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about. So proactively building tools to use our emotions in a way that are going to help us. Feeling some stress is really good. We need a little bit of stress to be like, oh, I guess I better study, because, that test is tomorrow, or that assignment is due. And that adrenaline rush is like, oh, okay, I'm just going to do it now. I have to do it. So that little bit of stress, feeling a little anxious is a good thing. Just as much as we need to feel excited or happy, feeling sad, like, even, it's a normal and a good thing to feel sad, because if you feel sad or you feel lost, it means you also had the attachment and you had that real positive, or that feeling, that something that made you feel good, right? Because you can't really feel good if you don't know what it's like to feel bad. So you need the full range in order to appreciate it all and feel alive. So just because somebody's not exhibiting a certain emotion does not mean that they are not feeling it, because we're human, of course. Yeah. We have to.
correct me if I'm wrong. I think your research kind of goes with like community-based music therapy.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So music therapy itself, so I should clarify, because often I actually was at an online conference today, and there was a poster presentation, and a student presented, it was about undergraduate students listening to music, and they used the state anxiety inventory measurement tool, and to see how listening to music affected their state anxiety, and it reduced their state anxiety. But in the abstract, they talked about music therapy and how music therapy was reducing the anxiety. This research was not music therapy. This research was conducted by a PhD student. I believe she was a PhD student. And she was literally just running an experiment of, if students listen to this song or nothing, how does it affect their state anxiety? There was no music therapist involved. There was no healthcare goals. They were not engaging in music therapy. But they used the term music therapy in the description of the study. So music therapy is not the use of music to feel good, although it often is thought to be the case. That would be the use of using music therapeutically. And I think most of us across the globe use music therapeutically, and this is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But the profession of music therapy, which is what we're doing in my PhD work, we're offering music therapy sessions. That means they are facilitated by a credentialed music therapist, which means they've done the training to become a music therapist, and they are facilitating the experience of the participants. And we're running 2 different music therapy groups. One that implements what we call receptive music therapy interventions. So this is where they are guided in the music listening. And so they're more like they're receiving the music. And then there is verbal discussion about it, and how that, in this particular case, connects to stress and anxiety, and building tools to manage stress and anxiety. The other group uses active music therapy interventions. So in this case, they are writing their own songs. They're looking at the lyrics of songs. If we weren't online, because we're online due to the pandemic, but if we were not, if we were in person, another active intervention would be the actual playing of instruments, like improvising music. And the participants don't have to have any background in music at all to participate in music therapy. So we are recruiting undergraduate university students at McMaster University. So we've been running this since September of 2020. We just finished our 3rd block of the study. And so we also, because we want to see, again, music therapy is, again, facilitated by a credentialed music therapist using various aspects of music. They can be receptive or active. So part of this research was, are the receptive interventions more effective, or are the active interventions more effective, or does it not matter? So that's why we're dividing these interventions, so that we can also comment on that aspect. And then we have a verbal group, because that is the standard of care, if you like. Like at McMaster, if you go to the Wellness Center, predominantly the services are verbal based. So we want to know if the music therapy interventions are as effective, basically, as the standard of care. And then we compare all of those to students that receive nothing at all.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And just quickly, I know probably a lot of students are listening to this radio station. Where would they be able to sign up for your study if they could?
Yes. So the email address is proactivewellness2020 at gmail.com. And that is the email to receive information, the letter of consent, or just to ask any questions about the study. Students can also email myself directly at finnerr@mcmaster.ca, and I'd be happy to connect with students as well.
We'll link your emails in our Instagram post as well. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. And I have a poster with information too, so I can send that your way to share as well. Yeah, because we're continually recruiting. And another thing that's kind of cool, I think, about this study is we ask students to provide a very small hair sample from the back of the head. And what we do is we send this to a lab and have it measured for cortisol levels, which is a known biomarker for stress. Mm-hmm. And we're asking the students to participate in the therapy, one of the 3 therapy groups or the control group for 6 weeks. So once a week for 6 weeks or nothing for 6 weeks. And we ask to have the hair sample provided at week 1 and again after the study, after week 6. So we can see on a biological level, has there been a change in stress? So we're collecting the cortisol levels as well as the state anxiety, which is a standardized psychometric test, a Likert scale, as well as another standardized test of perceived stress. And we're also collecting heart rate variability. Now, it's online, so how do we do that? With an app.
Oh.
So we ask all the students to download an app called Welltory, and this app will give you your heart rate variability. And so they just need to put their finger on the flashlight of the camera, and they hold it there for the duration of the reading, and that will give a heart rate. So we're collecting the cortisol, the heart rate variability, and the psychometric measures in order to test the efficacy of music therapy for managing stress and anxiety.
Have you seen any interesting results? I don't know, it might be too early for that. Oh.
Well, it's too early to say anything conclusively because our numbers are too small, right? So we've had, let's see, I think we're at around 50 participants of data thus far. So it's not, the number of participants thus far is not big enough to say anything conclusively, but I can tell you some trends. So the trends we've seen from the cortisol results thus far are that in all of the intervention groups, the cortisol levels are lower. And in the control groups, the cortisol after the 6 weeks actually went up for the control groups. The music therapy groups are showing the greatest effect for changes in state anxiety and perceived stress. And the other thing that I think above and beyond all of these measures that is really important when it comes to implementing proactive interventions on campus, you could have had a study with a gazillion people that showed the efficacy of therapy ABC. But if no students on campus are going to attend this super effective therapy that has been proven inside out, then it's not going to be able to be effective, right? We need to get people to engage in something in order for them to have the results. So in this study thus far, what we are seeing is students over the course of 6 weeks tend to drop out of the study who are in the verbal-based group. And we have the largest attendance rate in the 2 music therapy groups.
Wow.
Yeah, we have over 85% attendance in the music therapy groups over the course of the 6 weeks versus 56% in the verbal therapy groups.
And would you say that the dropout rate is probably due to external factors like not having enough time? Have you been able to find out why people are dropping out regardless?
Yes. So sorry, I should say there's 2 things. So there's attrition, there's the actual dropping out, and then there's attendance. So those who did not drop out, those who remained in the study, out of the 6 weeks, we had 85% attendance for the people that stayed in the study versus 56% attendance in the verbal. And then on top of that, we have dropout. And then the dropout are, those factors are the same across all three groups. So dropout because somebody got hired onto a job, for example, and now their new hours doesn't work. Like there's a conflict, something of that nature, where they just weren't able to attend any longer. But there are other studies as well, at inpatient hospitals, for example, where music therapy was offered, and they had most of the individuals would attend music therapy more so than any of the other interventions. Yeah. So this seems to be a common theme. And going back to what we were talking about in regards to stigma, one thought is, when an individual is going to participate in a music therapy group, it could be that the stigma associated with that is very different from going to a quote unquote therapy group, right? Like your standard verbal therapy group. Yeah. Whereas when you're engaging in music, you don't necessarily feel like you're in therapy, even though you are doing incredible therapeutic work. Yeah.
Is it a fair conclusion? Like, say if you're like trying to publish any of your findings, like, would any like reviewers knock you down for assuming that, or like assuming that like a verbal therapy is just like less people are going because it's like because of these external factors? Like, would a reviewer like?
Are you talking about the stigma aspect? Do you mean?
Yeah. Would a reviewer accept that?
Well, I think that's a great question. There are papers that talk about how music itself doesn't have negative stigma, right? So if you're engaging in music, so there's a good argument. So in the paper, I would need to make a very good argument for how music itself has historically, and we have a very, very long history of engaging in music as humans without negative stigma, right? So we engage in music to build relationships with our children. We engage in music for exercise classes. We engage in music for parties. Every festival, any kind of tradition includes music. And these are all void of negative associations. So the fact that it's very difficult to find something that has music and a negative connotation would be my first argument for this proof of how music is so layered with a positive stigma, that this is something that is humanly healthy, that we're drawn to. People think about this last year during the pandemic, and the videos that went viral of people playing music over the banisters, and how people would come out of their windows to see, right? And nobody's ashamed to say, oh, yeah, I didn't really want anybody to see me listening to that music, right? Like, because we're all proud to be out there. Everyone's happy to be a part of a music event. And any musician who, is sharing their music during the pandemic, I would imagine they weren't thinking twice as far as, oh, is someone going to think like, a negative connotation? Because their experiences would have shown them that whenever they play music, it draws a positive crowd. Like people are drawn to it. Yes. Whereas our society is not drawn to engaging in verbal therapy.
Right. Okay.
Right? If you were on campus, or any student was on campus, and a friend said to them, hey, do you want to go and grab a drink at the pub on campus? And if you were like, oh, actually, I've got tickets to a concert, I can't come, you would say, I have tickets to a concert, no big deal. If you couldn't come because you had an appointment with your therapist, I don't know how many people would share that.
Yeah.
Probably not a lot, yeah.
Right? And that's a problem. Like, we need to own that, and in order for that to not be the case. But because music tends to have this very accepting aspect to it, an argument that I'd like to make is that students, particularly, because that's my focus with this study, are more, perhaps can give themselves permission more easily to talk to their friends, family, to say, oh, I've got this music therapy today, or I'm going to music therapy, or there's this music therapy group apparently going on, I'm going to check it out. Perhaps it lessens the stigma. That's a thought.
Okay. And just on terms of stigma or like acceptance, do you have like any knowledge about how music therapy is involved in like in hospitals or anything like that?
Yeah. So it's not part of the standard of care, unfortunately. But there are many hospitals that have a mental health unit that do have music therapy, or families bring in privately a music therapist. Okay. So, and then unfortunately, so historically, the mental health hospital in Toronto on Queen Street, they used to have 2 full-time music therapists. They were let go due to funding when they made some changes over there. So, but I know they're doing lots of research in relation to music and mental health. So hopefully that will bring music therapy as an option back to its patients. And I know of some facilities in the Hamilton area or programs where music therapy is offered, Homewood being one, and there's a great program out in Guelph. But again, it's not standard, right? It's a small handful of places. But I think it comes down again to educating those who are who have the ability to hire, right? When they look at the budget and then, okay, well, what is so first of all, healthcare, right away, the budgets are always atrociously inefficient.
Yeah.
So I feel for anybody who's in that position, because, what do you cut? What do you keep? What do you add? Everything adds value to some aspect, and we need more hands on deck in so many areas. But if music therapy can also be implemented, there are so many additional aspects that are typically missing in the hospital setting that connect us to our humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also find it interesting just on the play that there is between music and also like modernity and ancient times. Like I know in the course we looked at how music was used in ancient times to over cooking fire, where they would have events and stuff. And also as time evolved, we're becoming more connected with music. So I feel like music therapy is a very dual solution to many things, especially in healthcare, because it goes back to ancient times and it's also compatible with modern times.
Absolutely, because it's part of being human.
Yeah.
Right? So whether or not we're in ancient times or we're talking about today, we're still just human beings. And as humans, we've always been connected to music. That hasn't changed. Our environment has changed. Our civilization has changed. But ourselves as humans and how we connect to music and the impact music has on us physiologically, emotionally, biologically, psychologically, hasn't changed.
Yeah,
that hasn't changed. And I think, however, in modern medicine, we've forgotten a little bit about that. In modern medicine, in order to advance the way we have, which has been amazing, right? Like modern medicine has improved our overall lifestyle and our physical health. And And that's been by getting rid of all of these factors that cannot be controlled for and just focusing on what can be controlled for. And music, of course, how there's so many variables in music that it's so messy. And science, as we've created it in this modern world, doesn't like things that are messy, right? Like how do you, it's just not clear cut. There's too many pieces to it. So it's really just since the 1990s that we have had the tools to scientifically look at the brain and the impact that music has on the brain, that neuroscience has been able to inform how the importance of what music can do. So it becomes less messy. I mean, looking at the brain is still really messy, don't get me wrong. But we have tools now that enable us to manage these variables in a way that modern medicine is able to embrace researching music and embrace recognizing its impact from a scientific perspective. And I think for that reason, we're starting to see much more recognition for the importance of music on our overall well-being.
Wow. That was awesome. I think I wish you could talk all day, but we're coming to the end here, just the last few seconds. Thank you so much, Rachel, for this amazing talk. We're so appreciative of you coming on and talking to us. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah, if you want to give a little sign out or anything, you're welcome to do so.
Well, I definitely would say if anybody would like further information on the topic of music therapy, you can also follow on social media, Music Therapy Academy. So that's my academy that provides additional information about the use of music and wellness within one scope of practice. So check it out there if you'd like to have any further information. And thank you to you both so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Starts with a look.